Hey, and welcome to this video on collecting our children. And, this video is mainly about the parent or child giver relationship and children, but I think we could do a little bit of this in all our relationships. Um, but I'll speak to that. And so this idea, this is not my idea. This comes from Gordon Neufeld's book, Hold On to Your Kids. I think it's one of the best parenting books that I've found, both as a parent myself, as well as being a therapist and working with families. And so, first, I'll describe what collecting our kids is. It's certain activities, certain behaviors that we can regularly practice with our children. Of course, collecting our kids or even collecting those others that we have relationships with is going to change. It's age dependent. So, how we collect our kids when they're young is going to be different than when they're preteens and when they're teenagers and even into adults. So, Gordon Neufeld in his book, he talks a lot about the importance of the parent or adult to child relationship versus the peer relationship. So, that the relationships our kids have with their friends, with those sort of the same around the same ages. And if I was to give any critique to the book, I felt like there was a little maybe too strong um a almost a fear in the book. Now, it's been a while since I've read it, so maybe that's not fair, but that was my initial sort of experience. But if you get past that, I think the book is one of the best parenting books out there. um New Gordon has worked with families for I think over 40 years now. He has a whole teach education where you can go and learn the in Neufeld Institute, I think it's called. And so there's a lot of value in this. And he comes from an attachment based, okay, and that's attachment understanding has been around for a long time. I think it's about 40 years as well now, maybe longer. And it's really understanding the importance of letting our kids feel known, or even the other people in our lives feel known, feel appreciated, understood, loved. They're not alone in the world. And so collecting them, especially when they're young, I did this with my son when he was younger a lot, is important in building that relationship with them. And so there's sort of four steps. The way he kind of describes this a little bit as a dance, kind of like bees or birds and stuff do. It's really important in times of separation, especially for young kids. So when they're going to school or daycare or whatever, or they're going, to visit grandma or whatever it is, when they're separating from us, or when they're coming back from a separation, right? So we go and pick them up after daycare or school. These sorts of little moments, this is something I really practice with my son. I make sure I'm not on the phone, on my phone when I'm picking him up. I'm not distracted. I'm there present with him. And so the first part of the dance is to get into the child's face. Okay. For young children, you might bend down and you might greet them with a smile, letting them know 70 to 90% of communication is nonverbal. So it's more than the words, it's the body language, it's the energy, facial expressions, the tone of our voice, all of those things. So, we're smiling. We're happy to see them. We're letting them know that we've missed them, that we've this actually is the second stage, but letting them know that we've been in their thoughts. Oh, I missed you when I was at work, or I was thinking about you, or this thing happened and it reminded me of you. And so this is kind of helping them create a connection even when you're physically not with them. But getting down into their space if they're young. As they get older, they obviously get physically bigger, but also this communication needs to be more subtle. Otherwise, our children will reject it. My son, um, he doesn't want to be hugged generally in front of his friends anymore, or kissed on the head like I often did when he was younger. And so, yeah, it sucks that he's growing older, but it's important that we respect some of that. But also, we can be a little bit awkward. I'm not suggesting being awkward for awkward's sake, but, oh, my dad is so whatever. And kids may joke about it, they may make sort of poke fun at it, but I think deep down, a lot of kids really would want that, even if maybe they don't realize it. So we get down and we smile or we nod and we form a connection. And like I said, it's mostly nonverbal. And then we also can provide something for them to hold on to. So for young kids, it might be a hand or a finger physically. Kids, when they're really young, they want to be attached to us physically. And a big part of what Dr. Neufeld talks about is we want to encourage dependence. And this might go against a lot of what other people say, but I truly believe this. Our kids will become independent, but first they must be dependent on us. They must have a secure base. They must learn to trust themselves through the experience of depending on us and then slowly in their own ways, breaking away from that dependence on us and creating independence. And that's really what the teenage years are all about. But they still need that home base. And I think a lot of parents, their kid, they're wanting to spend more time, and in some ways that frees up our lives and stuff. And so we think that, oh yeah, I should just totally go into letting my kid be independent. But that's not actually what they need. They do need more space. They do need independence, but they need us just as much, but in different ways. Okay. Um, so the way this idea of holding on to something, uh, a lot of it can be around little rituals. Maybe it's after school going to the park for a few minutes and playing and just kind of connecting. Or one ritual my son and I have is often going to a coffee shop. Not all the time, but we'll go there and he'll have a hot chocolate or whatever, and I'll have a tea, and we'll just spend time maybe playing a board game or talking or whatever. Nighttime ritual was huge. Every night before bed, we would read a story. And that's a way of us connecting and letting him know that I want to spend time with him, and that he matters, and that, connection is important, that he's important. And that was a way of ending the day with him having that sense of I'm there with him. Even if I'm physically, in my own space after we do the bedtime routine, I was there. Or in the mornings, having a bit of space and time, especially when kids are young, to connect. Maybe cuddling on the couch, or, reading a book quickly together, or whatever it is. And our busy lives make this more and more difficult, but it's important. It's important to have that reestablishing of the relationship. Um, Family dinners are important. As I was preparing for this video, I remembered The Awakened Brain, a brilliant book from, I think her name is Lisa Miller. And she did all these studies basically on what are the factors that bring the most resilience to our kids growing up. And it was actually spirituality, but not in this airy fairy kind of, you know, um, spirituality that sometimes gets portrayed. But it was, a big part of that spirituality, as I remember, and it's been a little while since I've read the book, but it was these little rituals we have, like eating dinner together or night bedtime story or doing things. In a sense, that was like an embodied um, something greater than us, right? This awakened brain. And it relationship helps build neural pathways from the different, the left and the right and the different aspects of our brain, which is really what creates a healthy human being, creates emotional regulation, it creates integration in our brain and nervous system, and it allows us to navigate the difficulties of life. Okay, so these little rituals, they show that we're interested in our kids, and that we value them, their time. We want to experience things together. Be connected, face to face. Dinner, sitting down to dinner. There's face to face rather than um, watching a screen or going to their sports and everything. Which it's not that we get rid of all that stuff, but this is on top. The third thing that he talks about is inviting dependence. Okay, when our kids are really little, they depend on us for everything. We have to feed them, bathe them, change their clothes, all these things. But as they get older, that physical dependence changes, but they still depend on us emotionally and mentally. And of course, that changes. And as I said, when they become teenagers, they're finding their independence through friends and through rebelling and all of these things, and that's a natural separation. At first, they need to become like us in a sense. They need to depend on us, and once they have that secure base, then they can go out and explore and break away and find themselves. But having that secure home base actually gives them the platform, knowing that they can come back into that safety when the world becomes too much. And we can help them, calm down, regulate their nervous system, come back so they're not completely overwhelmed, and then, maybe make a new plan or figure out how to handle a difficult situation. They need us for that. But we need that secure emotional base in order for them to trust that they can do that. That, even if they screw up and they make mistakes and make a mess of things, that we still love them and care about them, and that they can come to us. Dr. Neufeld talks about helping them orient to the world. Okay, that dependence. And so, one example I remember, and when our kids are first going to school, grade kindergarten and grade 1, grade 2, we're introducing them to their teachers and to different people, uncles and aunts or friends of the family. And so in a sense, we're extending safety. So we're taking the safety we've created with them and we're extending it to others, other trusted adults, um, so that they can broaden their, the safety they have in the world, all the people that they can trust and learn from. Because it's not just our job as parents; we're kind of the primary guides and guardians. I really like those two terms for parenting. But we grew up in tribes. We had villages of people help raise our children in the past. And, this is something that we've lost in many ways, but it is extended through going to school, going to daycare, and these sorts of things. And so we extend that security, that secure relationship, hopefully, that we have with our kids, and we extend it outwards, and we're helping them orient in the world, learning to navigate, just like a map and compass. We're orienting to the world, helping them orient to the world. And so that can also be, for my son, this is a big one, letting them know what to expect. So if we're going somewhere, letting him know a little bit about where we're going, what the plan is, um, what he might experience or expect, maybe previous memories, if we're going to somewhere we've been before, that sort of thing. So we're helping them orient their mind and their psyche, maybe their emotions to what's to come. And we do that through letting them know what might happen, what's coming, as well as maybe memories of previous experiences. And we are their compass for a long time. And again, even as teenagers, they're finding their own compass, but they still need us to be there as that. Even our, we aren't fully developed until we're about 25 as far as our brains and nervous systems and maturing emotionally. And in the West, we are a very individual society, and often we don't necessarily have the same family, strong family bonds and everything. And so this has become even more important and more of a pressure for parents in many ways. And that's hard. It's hard. We do need other people, um, trusted adults to help with this big job as parents. Okay, and part of this orientation is guiding them in how to be. We're modeling for them how to be in relationships. One thing that I think is difficult and often not fully understood is that kids actually should see conflict. They should also see the resolution of the conflict. Um, Conflict is actually natural and normal in relationships. Disagreeing, being able to have conversations, disagreeing, having even strong emotions, and it not going perfectly, and then coming back and repairing those. That's a huge lesson that kids, we don't really learn from just being told about something, but when we experience it, when we actually have it happen or we're in the presence of it happening, we learn from that. And so many different levels rather than just the mental part. We learn to trust that it can work out. Mom and dad argue and fight, or other adults, and but they figure it out. So it's okay if I don't agree with everything. It's okay if I get upset. Allows expression, but that doesn't mean those people are just gonna stop caring about me, stop being in relationship with me. It's interesting. My son and I, we watch TV together, and there's been a couple of shows over the last 6 or 8 months that have he's really been drawn to. He's wanted to watch. One of them was Young Sheldon. Um, and it's interesting about the main character Sheldon, of course, but it's the dynamic in the family. I think that it really is the brilliance of the show. And when we came to the end of the show, we'd watched all the seasons. My son even reflected on that of like, interesting the dynamics, seeing the dynamics in the family he had with his sister and his older brother, with his parents, and seeing the impact that Sheldon had on the siblings that was reflected in the show. Often the parents, there was conflict. The mother-in-law, the way she sometimes spoke to the father in the show. It wasn't all perfect, but it was a really good example of how all of that stuff can be going on, and there's still this loving, caring family that's there for you when you need it. So I think it was a really good example of just seeing that. And another show that we're watching right now is from the 90s. It was a show that I liked growing up. It's called Family Matters. And often in this show, I didn't recognize it quite when I was younger. I was a teenager, but there is a lot of conflict. They often, almost every episode, they have conflict and they resolve it. And some might say that, it's not really realistic because they always resolve it very quickly. And, that's fair. The conflict isn't always resolved that quickly. But I still think it's an important thing to have shown that in families, conflict is normal. It's okay to make mistakes, but that part of the repair is to own those mistakes and to um, take ownership of things. And so there's a lot of things to be learned through media. I don't follow a lot of those shows. I don't know if there's as many as there used to be. Young Sheldon, I think, is a good example of a current one. But, just to sum all of this up, collecting our children is about, especially when they're younger, but at any time, letting them know that we're thinking of them, letting them and reconnecting with them after times of separation, of letting them know that there's this care and this relationship that's happening even when we're not physically together, right? It's really it's really important when kids are younger. They don't necessarily in their psyches have the same ability as an older child does to know that, you know, parents are safe. You can sort of see this on the playground. When kids are really young, they tend to stick close to mom and dad. I mean, it depends on their personalities, um, but as they get older, they travel further and further away from the parents, and then eventually the parents don't even have to be at the playground anymore. They can be at home. Kids, so it changes, but establishing these moments of connection, even with our older kids. Maybe our teen comes home and we spend a few minutes just focusing on them, saying, "Hey, like, hey, how are things? How was your day? Oh, oh, that sounds like you had a hard day." That sort of thing. These are the important parts of creating relationships, and we can even do this in our friendships. And many of us do it naturally. One partner comes home after work and they come right to see the other partner, and they give a kiss and they say, "How's your day?" and they talk a little bit. That's reestablishing the connection. That's, in the sense, collecting. This is right. This is re-engaging the attachment of the relationship. Of We often look at the power of independence, and that has its place, but we need other people. We're wired in our nervous systems to be part of a group, part of a family, part of a tribe. And these little moments of reconnection after separation are absolutely key to maintaining, to revitalizing, to reestablishing those important bonds in our lives. I hope you've taken something for you as a parent or even just as a person who has relationships. Thank you.